Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer. And welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and the end is nigh. I'm almost done Scorsese. So close. I only have a few more left, and still figuring out who's going to come next. But this week, we're doing Wolf of Wall Street, and I have my good friend Rod here, who I've been on his podcast a couple of times. So if you want to listen to me do a bunch of impressions, maybe this episode too. Not going to lie, I think I was almost going to lose my voice screaming doing a Rob Reiner impression before starting to record this before I hopped on. But Rod, so thanks for coming on.
Oh, well, thanks for having me back, Shane. Last time I was on, which I guess was a couple months ago, I guess I set the record right for the longest episode you ever did. So I'm going for the record again. No, I'm kidding.
I don't know if I'll ever have a longer recording than the 4 hours that it took my friend Matt, Alex, and I to do our first ever podcast, which was our top 10 movies of all time. I try to be a good lead and like move things along at a good pace. That wasn't working that day. Just kept going on like this is too much content for one video, because literally we talked about 30 movies.
Right.
So there you go. But Rod, before we hop into things, would you like to shamelessly plug anything for all of our lovely viewers to check out your stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do a podcast with my buddy Ben of the Infinity Film Podcast, which you guys can check out on Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple and wherever you guys listen to your podcast. You can listen to us there. You can follow us on our Instagram page at the Infinity Film Podcast. And then you can just follow me on my personal film page, the Cinema Gallery. That's Cinema Gallery with 3 L's because Instagram is stupid and they couldn't allow me to spell gallery correctly. So yeah, that's about it.
There you go. Instagram is an interesting place. You could rebrand yourself. I'm just going to randomly say this because it's popped in my head. So after seeing the movie X, which we might talk about later, my fiance's Instagram handle is now Foxy Trainwreck. It used to be Crafts and Carbs, so now it's Foxy Trainwreck. So indeed, because all my fiance posts about, well, she could add cats to that. So basically, it's just all for crafts, cats, and carbs. So, but that name matches very, very well, honestly. So there you go. But that's not what we're here to talk about. This is Welcome to the Wasteland. We have 3 segments here. So we start off with coming attractions, which this is going to be for the weekend of March 25th, which we have a few options here, and then we'll get into our feature of the week, Wolf of Wall Street, and then we'll have some recommendations, and it sounds like the two of us have a lot, so we're going to have some fun. Yeah. Now, for coming attractions for this week, we both have the same movie we're most excited about, but what else is coming out? So we have The Lost City, which I was convinced the only time I was going to laugh was the 5 minutes that Brad Pitt was going to be on screen, but apparently it's getting some good reviews out there, so I'm like, okay, Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. We have a small film, 7 Days, coming out, and then The Infinite Storm, which is like a survival film with Naomi Watts, and Mothering Sunday, the most British film you've ever seen. So, which I've gotten to see those last 2 already, and I can confirm Mothering Sunday is indeed the most British film you'll ever see.
Infinite Storm, I thought was coming out next week, so that's this week. Okay.
Yeah, so I use First Showing, and I know it is coming out this week because AMC app was advertising it a lot.
Okay.
It's like, come see Naomi Watts in a storm. So, which that's the crux of the movie, more or less.
Well, look, if it's better than her last movie, she did The Desperate Hour, I'm all for it. So,
I thought it was a really solid survival film, but what we're most excited about, what is that, Rod? What are we most excited about?
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Shane, I am really looking forward to this. First of all, it's A24. Second of all, it's Michelle Yeoh. And third of all, it's a multiverse story. So you got 3 things I love, and you wrap that all into an A24 movie. I'm down.
Yeah, and this is, well, I feel like this is saying this, but anytime A24 drops a trailer, you're just like, yeah, my money. So might as well take it.
Yeah.
And like the trailer for this kills it. And I'm just like, this looks fascinating. And you start off with this really frumpy looking Jamie Lee Curtis, and then Michelle Yeoh, who has some really funny lines and deliveries. But like this whole multiverse story of her like trying to channel all these skills that she has across the multiverse to like for whatever end this movie actually has. I'm like, I'm down. I got enough. I remember, and we'll probably talk about this more, but seeing X over the weekend and seeing all the A24 trailers that they have lined up, and I'm just like, between this and Men, I'm just like, yep, A24
that was
have
the only preview they showed at my screening of X for A24 at least was Men, and that looks terrifying.
Looks terrifying. And when Alex Garland's name popped up, I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I'm just like, and I'm like, Ex Machina, and then it's just like from the director of Ex Machina. I'm like, I could write this trailer. But yeah, it's Everything Everywhere All at Once looks like a crazy fun time, and I'm really looking forward to it. And it's getting killer reviews too. So
it has.
It's an exciting film, and I'm hoping that I don't know what the distribution's going to be like, but if I don't get to see this opening weekend, I'll be very upset.
So, we were talking a little bit about A-list earlier. So I was like, I've been checking my AMC because I'm also an A-list account holder. So I've been patiently waiting for AMC to drop some tickets for this because so far they haven't. I'm hoping by Tuesday night or Wednesday, which is usually when they start releasing, tickets for the weekend, I'll be able to get some for Thursday night or Friday or whatever. So
yeah, I'm come Wednesday when I get home from work. That's usually my like first thing I do when I get home is pull up the AMC app and it's like, what the hell's coming out this weekend? That I'll actually get to see. And I'm really hoping that pops up because if it's not, I'll be disappointed. I'll definitely be seeing The Lost City because that's going to be playing at every AMC. So
they've been doing early screenings for that too, and I think AMC on Wednesday, because I was looking at the app earlier today, they have like another special, like a 1-day special screening, like before. It's called like Lost City, like date night special or something like that. So, the funny thing is when I saw the seating chart, it was like a bunch of like party of one, just like single seat tickets. So I'm like, well, this date night thing is they're really advertising that well.
Like, I don't have a date. I'm gonna go see The Lost City. So that's exactly how it went. But I'll be seeing it with my fiance at some point this weekend.
I'm sure
in between getting ready for Oscar weekend. Oscars are coming. The only 2 movies my fiance hasn't seen that were nominated for Best Picture were Coda and Drive My Car, because I had a screening for Coda and watched it without her. And then I drove 45 minutes to go see Drive My Car by myself because I'm like, I have to. I already waited 2 months.
So, I'm rooting for Drive My Car. I'm also rooting for Don't Look Up. I know it's an unpopular thing to say, but I'm also rooting for Don't Look Up. We've already had that conversation on our podcast.
I honestly think that's going to win Best Original Screenplay.
I do too, because it just won the WGA yesterday. So which surprised me. I was like, holy crap. So, but the favorite now seems like it's going to be Coda. I still think Power of the Dog might win it, but I'm rooting for a lot of films, Shane, because I just saw West Side Story like a couple weeks ago too. Now I'm kind of want that to win, but if I had to choose just one that I really want to win, it's probably Drive My Car.
Yeah, I don't see a world where that doesn't win international film. Like if you're nominated for Best Picture, I feel like you kind of have to win that.
Yeah.
Like, then what's the point? Unless there's multiple, and there's not. So it's like if you're good enough to get nominated for the overall Best Picture, you're probably going to win the international one, even though that could have been an extremely unbelievable stacked category.
Yeah.
And then they didn't pick a hero. And I'm like, what? And then, like, obviously, I think Titan was a little too much for the Academy.
I'm not gonna lie, that I'm not the biggest fan of Titan, or is it Titan? How do you pronounce it? I say Titan.
I'm not French. I don't know.
That movie just as a whole didn't work for me. because I was getting squeamish a lot throughout a lot of that movie. And
If you don't, there might be something wrong with you.
yeah, I think so. But I think the performances hold it together. And I think the film really picks up when she meets the father.
Yeah, the father, a fire chief guy.
Yeah, the fire chief. I think that's when the film picks up for me. But at that
You
point,
know when it stops being like about a serial killer?
yes, pretty much. Yeah. And it becomes an entirely different movie. And then the ending worked for me too. But I just felt that the pacing was kind of off at points throughout the film for me, Shane, too. So
I like the fact that that movie won the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival. I'm just like, what? But you know, it didn't carry over to the Oscars. And Drive My Car, I think, is definitely going to run away with that. So
I hope so.
we shall see. But we're here to talk about another 3-hour film called The Wolf of Wall Street. So, Rod, why did you want to come on this week for The Wolf of Wall Street?
Because you asked me to. Not kidding. But no, The Wolf of Wall Street is for a while, from like 2013 to 2018, 19, it was my favorite film of all time. So I had a good 6-year run. But at the time, I hadn't yet to see all of Scorsese's films. I think I maybe seen 7 or 8 of his films at that point before I saw Wolf of Wall Street. So, I remember that summer, I was with a buddy of mine. We went and saw World War Z of all films, and they showed that first trailer for Wolf of Wall Street with the Kanye West song, Black Skinhead, playing over it. And I was like, this is a Scorsese movie? Are you kidding me right now? So I had a lot of hype going into it, and the film more than delivered. And I haven't really had a chance to talk about it a whole lot on other platforms. I maybe talked about it a few times on our podcast that we do, but yeah, this film to me it's the best performance from Leo, in my opinion. And I don't think it's close. I know people might say The Revenant or another film or Gilbert Grape, but to me, I think this is top. This is Leo at his absolute best.
I think, especially after watching all of Scorsese's films, like this is definitely up there, maybe with The Aviator for me. Because I feel like The Aviator was the one that was like, oh my God, Leo could like act.
Yeah.
Because like, Titanic and even in Gangs in New York, he feels a little out of his element, I think. Because like, to be fair, he has to act against Daniel Day-Lewis.
That's unfair.
And that's kind of just like, and like Aviator, and then like this movie would not work without a performance like Leo gives in this movie. No. Like the fact that you need to buy into this man for this movie to work. And Leo is committed. And this is the kind of thing where it's just like, I find it so funny that he's like legitimately friends with Jonah Hill.
Yeah.
Because they seem like such an odd pair. And then you watch them in this movie together, and it's just like, go and smoke crack with me? Smoke crack. And then when Leo smokes it, he's just like,
See, that's a great thing about Leo's performance too. Is that not just like the him acting, but the physical acting he's doing in here, and especially that one scene when the lemon quaaludes finally kick in, and that is probably one of my favorite physical just acting performances I've seen maybe in any movie. Period. That was just so good, Shane.
Like, and that's the thing too, because like there's a physicality in this film that's off the charts.
Yeah,
and that's not even like talking about the charm that he has and I feel like Leo's at his best when he's spewing insecurity, because he does that in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He does it a lot in Don't Look Up, which I think is a fantastic performance. And here it's like he's so confident that when he is that really insecure part of him, like when he's paranoid and stuff like that, it just pops. And you have the scenes where it's like that one scene where he's like gonna retire, and he's up and and that interaction that he has with the one woman that's there from the beginning at Stratton
Right.
Oakmont. And like that's that I'm like, dang, I almost feeling bad for these people. Just like you have to take a step back at some point. You're just like, wait a minute, they're a bunch of scumbags. Wait a sec.
Well, the Scorsese does such a good job because like most of this film is really essential. Like it's loud, a lot's going on. It's a lot of debauchery, but when you have those quieter moments, like that scene, Scorsese does a good job of making you, even though these are terrible human beings, you still find out. Scorsese does a good job of making you still care about what's going on in the situation, and it's because of his direction and the acting that goes on in that performance too. I mean,
I think that
it's so good.
scene, and then the scene with was it his first wife? It's because
Kristen Milioti,
yeah, when she finds him in the limo, pulls his ass out, and that interaction the two of them have on that street, that's I got legitimately like, oh geez, I felt really bad in that moment for her. And like there's some moments here where there's some legitimate, because like yeah, you could get lost in the fact that this is a boisterous film and this is in your face nonstop, but like Leo and the whole frat guy thing, and like him like, I'm not going nowhere, and like that whole entire thing, and him with the whole Steve Madden thing where they introduced the lewds, and he's just like, Steve Madden. And like Leo's mocking him, Steve Madden, and like him dancing at his wedding, just pulling that out too. I'm just like,
so good.
It's so entertaining. And that's the thing, like Leo is doing so many things in this film.
Absolutely.
And it's really hard to break the fourth wall and be believable. And he feels like he's some kind of sinister or warped showman taking us through this whole entire insanity that is his life. Like from the whole entire thing where he's explaining his drug regimen, walking out his front door and just like chucking the goblet of orange juice behind him.
So my freshman year of college, they had like this poster sale, right? And they had that poster, Wolf of Wall Street poster with that entire quote. And I was like, I am buying this. I am getting this. It was like this big old poster sale that my school had, and I was like, I need this for my room. And that quote, kind of just speaks to who he is as a character. I mean, he has a drug problem, and this entire film shows how much of a drug addict he really is.
Yeah.
And Jonah. I mean, a lot of people point out. Jonah Hill points it out at one point. Naomi's aunt, Margot Robbie's aunt in the film, points it out more than once. Yeah. So
at the wedding.
Yeah, at the wedding. And then when they meet in London, when he's asking her to.
Well, you thought that they were going to sleep together? Because I did. The first time I watched this movie,
first screening I saw, I was like, I leaned over to my friend. I was like, are they about to hook up right now? Are we about to see some Game of Thrones stuff right now? This Scorsese's not pulling any punches here, is he? So,
no.
This is, like you said, he's such an interesting character. Like you said, sinister is a great word because he's a charismatic, sinister asshole. It's probably a great way of putting it. And yet, you root for the guy. At least I was that first viewing. You really do like, oh no, I don't let Kyle Chandler put you in jail. Even though you know it's going to happen, you're still kind of like wanting to get out of these bad situations he keeps getting himself into.
Well, and I think this was probably my fourth time watching the film at this point. Because one of the main reasons why I don't watch this a ton is because it is a 3-hour commitment. And sure doesn't feel like 3 hours though.
No.
That's not any time I've ever watched this movie has this felt like 3 hours. And it's the kind of thing where it's just like the first time you view this, you're just like, what a ride. And then you can really see the layers, and I never experienced anything this crazy, but I have an undergrad and master's of accounting. And I chose not to go into accounting because I didn't really vibe with the culture of it. And I experienced some of it. Nothing like this. Nothing like here's the drugs, here's like, sleeping with sex workers all the time and stuff like that. It was more of like the personality about it. I'm like, I don't like this. And like I wound up staying in higher education. So that says a lot. Very different vibe. But the thing is, it's like you have this whole entire film because from the beginning, he is this wide-eyed young man who you realize from the start, if you're really looking at it, that there, I don't think is a single point where he's an innocent person in this movie. Because from the start, he's ready to pick up anything. And you know that from the very jump with that first scene with Matthew McConaughey at lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like, so how many times do you jerk in a week? He's just like, those are Ricky numbers. You're going to need to jerk it 2 times a day. And soon you're going to be thinking of money. And just like the whole entire, like, when I saw that for the first time, the whole chest thing, I'm just like, did Matthew McConaughey like wander on the set? And just like, he was like in the
he's only in the first 20
door.
minutes of the movie too. So it's like, that's a great point. That's a great question. Like, just wander on set.
I feel like he was filming next door, and he just wanders on. It's like, hey Marty, you have something for me in your movie? And he's just like, yeah, Matthew, you just go in there and have some lunch with Leo. And just, I feel like that's just him. That was just all Matthew McConaughey's idea. Right. Just doing that whole entire crazy thing there. And it's so fascinating because he's in how much of this movie? But he's so memorable.
I think in this 3-hour movie, one of the things you come out remembering is the 3 scenes Matthew McConaughey's in. And that's like the first 20, 25 minutes in the movie.
Yeah. And the thing is, Leo's sitting across the man who took his Oscar.
Yeah.
Because
I didn't want to get into that, but let's have that discussion real quick, Shane, because that was a stacked year. It was a very, very stacked year between that, him and Dallas Buyers Club, Leo in this, and then I think Chiwetel also got nominated for 12 Years a Slave.
Yes.
I was like, I'm not going to be mad if Leo loses, but I feel like Leo kind of deserves it. So when Matthew won, I was like, okay, well, I didn't love Dallas Buyers Club, but I see why they gave it to him. It is a good performance, but it's nowhere close to what Leo did in Wolf of Wall Street or Chiwetel for 12 Years a Slave for that matter. So,
yeah, I feel like there's 3 different ways they could have went with the Oscars that year. You could go with the transformational, like, oh my God, Matthew McConaughey was a joke and now he's a serious actor thing, which they did that. That's what happened.
That started the Renaissance, the McConaissance.
Yeah, you could have went with the extremely complex and uncomfortable choice of Leo, because like this is not a good man that he's playing, but he's so infectious. It's so hard to look away from Jordan Belfort in this movie. And even to the point where he's talking down to you, which I thought was such a smart choice when he's just like, what we're trying to do here is like, and he's like, you have no idea what the hell I'm saying.
I was going to mention
what it matters is was this legal? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And like, it went the complete opposite of The Big Short, which went out of its way to make sure we understood things. And this is fitting the characters like, no, you're a bunch of idiots. You don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But you know what? It's illegal.
Because the thing is, like in The Big Short, you kind of have to know what's going on to really appreciate that movie or to really enjoy the movie. Here, it's like you really don't need to know what's going on. You get the basic premise of what's happening here.
Yeah, and you just know they're doing illegal stuff.
Exactly.
So, and then probably the most challenging performance and emotionally devastating performance that year was obviously Chiwetel Ejiofor, because like 12 Years a Slave is a whole other thing. And, it was an interesting choice that they made. And I feel like that was one of those kinds of things like, we're validating you, Matthew McConaughey. and like you're a true actor now. You don't just show off your abs and show up in a bunch of rom-coms anymore. And like in hindsight, like Leo could have won so many Oscars up to this point.
He really could.
And it kind of disappoints me that he won for The Revenant out of all of them. But you know what? It's just that happens all the time at this point.
Well, it's
like,
about to happen again this year with Will Smith. So, I mean, look, I love him and King Richard, but I mean, he should have won that Oscar 1 or 2 times beforehand. And I think the same thing with Leo. When he won for The Revenant, I was like, okay, I'm happy for him. But this was just overdue. I mean, this is just making up for you guys screwing up 2 years ago. So
yeah, and I'm trying to think back. I legitimately wanted Michael Fassbender to win
for Steve Jobs.
Yeah, for that year, because I was one of the 5 people who saw that in the 2 weeks it was in theaters before it got pulled out of all the theaters.
Oh my God. Honestly, dude, you're right, because I was like trying to see it in the theater. It's not. You have one showtime at 10:30 at night, so yeah, I'm definitely gonna go see it. And but then like once it hit digital, I mean, it was all over digital. They were advertising the hell out of it when it still was on digital and physical media. So
and like this year, honestly, I would be happy if anybody won except for Javier Bardem, because I just don't get the love for. Well, I get the love for being the Ricardos, but I don't agree with the love for being the Ricardos.
I don't.
But like,
oh God,
like Denzel, even in Macbeth, kills it. I want Andrew Garfield to win though.
There is a continued growing support, especially on Filmstagram, for Andrew Garfield. I will not be disappointed if he wins. My pick is obviously Will Smith, but I'm, deep down, Shane, I would like to see Denzel win it, because I think he got screwed over a couple of years ago when he went for Fences, when he was the obvious choice instead of who was that one that year?
Casey Affleck for Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah. So.
Oh, and that Denzel look the.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Like sitting there, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
I hope nobody tries to talk to him after the ceremony, because I don't think it's going to be a good thing.
I really like to know what happened at that Oscars after party.
I don't know how you go and watch Fences and not be like, this is the best performance of the year. Because like, if anything, that movie is nothing but performances, and Denzel's like, oh my God, off the charts. But speaking of performances, so obviously we talked a lot about Leo. The cast in this movie is ridiculous. Jonah Hill. I know Jonah Hill at this point had been nominated for Moneyball, which was a very different role for him because he was very reserved and soft-spoken. Not this. This is like the most off-the-chain performance I think Jonah Hill will ever give in his career. And
so good. It's just hilarious. I mean,
I saw all these guys looking at my cousin. I'm just like, if my cousin, it's gonna be me.
See, I thought that'd be my favorite scene featuring him, and then there's that scene with the gay butler a little later on in the film. He's like, you know who Rudy is from the Lollipop Club. You just like, I don't know who Rudy is. I get fucked up. I dance sometimes. I'm sorry. I get effed up. I dance sometimes. I don't remember. It's just like the way he says Rudy. It's just
also. Can they show this on network television? Because like I don't even get how they could possibly edit this.
I think FX did for a little bit.
Well, FX is a little different because they can actually get away with the F-bombs and stuff like that. But like, I don't even see how this is even possible to edit, to put on television, because how many times they say the F word in this, and candles and bums and cocaine on bums. It's just like,
I watch, one of the things I like to do, I like watching movies with my mom. I usually take her to a movie, or we'll sit down every once in a while, watch a movie. She was like, so how's The Wolf of Wall Street? And I was like, oh, it's great, Mom, but we can't watch this one together. So I let her borrow the Blu-ray, and she got through 5 minutes, and she came to me and she was like, "Yeah, I dropped off when I saw Leo doing blow from a woman's butthole." I was like, "Yep,
Yep. Yep.
okay, that's about why I'm glad. I figured you probably last that long." So
Yeah, there's a 80-year-old couple when we saw this movie, Jess and I, back in 2013, out within 10 minutes. Got out of the theater. I'm just like, yep, saw that one coming. I'm going to be the 80-year-old that does sit through these kinds of movies.
we're gonna be that couple that we talked about when X was going on. You know?
Yep. Laughing in the back of the theater with all the craziness going on.
So,
But like, oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just about that rating, and all the stuff that they get away with an R rating. One of the first, I don't like her as a person or as a reviewer, but Grace Randolph was one of the first reviews I watched for this movie. And she was all like, "Well, this should have gotten NC-17." I was like, "Okay, Grace, please, just enough." After seeing it, I was like, "Okay, maybe I do agree with Grace Randolph on this one because for this to get an R rating, clearly it was just about making money from the box office and everything. This one of the few times I actually do agree with Grace Randolph. This probably should have gotten an NC-17 rating.
Can you imagine what the cut that did get an NC-17 rating that was?
They would have to probably reopen dirty movie theaters back up.
They would have had actual because how they shoot the sex scenes in it, like the actual sex scenes. Well, I'm trying to think. That montage of him explaining sex workers was interesting. But he has his two sex scenes with Naomi, and you see his feet the first time, and him after I lasted for 9 seconds.
11 seconds.
Seconds. Yeah. And it's just that kind of thing. And honestly, the last one was too sad and uncomfortable to be sexy.
That was more uncomfortable than anything.
Yep. That was just nope. I feel
because it's funny too, because AMC doesn't really do this anymore, but this is back even before Reserve. This movie came up before Reserve Scene was even a thing. Security trying to get into this movie was ridiculous. So I'm like, okay, and because there was actually a line my friends and I had to wait in before we could even get in, and hearing people coming out, they're like, "Oh my god, that orgy scene! Oh my god, that scene!" I was like, "What are we getting ourselves into here? What's about to go down?"
And we'll definitely get to it, but obviously Jonah Hill's insane. Margot Robbie, name another star-making performance more impactful than this one.
Well, the world was introduced to Margot Robbie for sure in this movie. This was my because I can't remember what I saw for. I think I saw this first before About Time, but she was also in About Time that same year. But I think I saw Wolf of Wall Street first before About Time. I can't remember, but yeah, I think for most people this is their introduction to Margot Robbie, and I mean it's quite an introduction. It's kind of one of my only flaws I have with how Scorsese handled this movie is the treatment of women. And I think
in hindsight, I legitimately feel bad for Margot Robbie because she was 22?
She was very, very young.
And what she had to do in this movie is she's not going to say no to Martin Scorsese.
Nope.
And Leonardo DiCaprio when this is your chance. And I appreciate now the boundaries that she's set up for herself and stood up for herself with Harley Quinn and got some of those tattoos that she found really uncomfortable removed for the Suicide Squad and stuff like that. I appreciate the status she's been able to create for herself, but this movie, it's just she's a piece of meat for a decent chunk of this. And what's the one scene that you're going to remember her being really popping in is when she opens that door and she's just standing there naked and you're just
right. Well, other thing, because I'm okay. So I saw this. I'm a senior in high school, so you can just imagine when me and my friends and I when we used to see that for the first time. you're not really thinking about the all you're thinking about in that moment is, oh my God, there's Margot Robbie just standing there naked.
You're the mask. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ah.
And you can hear like a lot because that theater was almost sold out. And you can just hear a lot of the men just going,
And Scorsese knew exactly what he was doing.
he did.
And
He did.
but I do love that scene at the restaurant beforehand. It's just like, well, can't we just have friends? It's
Yeah,
like,
can we just be friends? Yeah.
and she's just like, do you just want to be friends with me? And I'm just like, and like she holds her own as an actress in this movie. Like she does not feel like she's in her early 20s. Like she has a lot of command on screen. And
Absolutely.
like when she stands up to him, the whole I love when he's just like flexing his Leo bod. Cause like to be fair, he's really scrawny and he has like that like bit of a belly and he's just trying to like go like this and she just like splashes the water in his face and then he freaks out like a little child.
Right.
The whole entire thing with the nanny cam.
I love that scene so much. Such a good scene.
Say hi to Rocco. And like at the end when she really stands up to him and just been like, this is the last time you'll ever have sex with me, Jordan. And just like, you believe her. And then that whole entire sequence, though, ooh.
It's a very uncomfortable sequence, and it's. I wish Scorsese had done a little bit better of a job of making me more emotionally attached to Naomi, because my friends and I, and fair or unfair, and I hope I don't get you canceled for me saying this, but like, we thought that first screening, even after after that, we were like, she's kind of a gold digger.
Well, and I think that's an interesting thing too, because like you pointed out, you're in high school.
Right.
And like I was a senior in college when I saw this movie. And it was interesting because the context of my life at the time was I wrote a whole entire senior thesis over the past 4 months on how film has changed society's outlook on business.
Interesting.
And then I saw this, I'm like, shit. And I'm like, I could have had so much more material. But like the whole entire, and this, we'll get back to some of the other things, but like I think this is a good time to talk about like, I think why this film works, which I know some people who think that this film legitimately glorifies this. Why I think this film works is because from the very start, Jordan's a bad person.
Absolutely.
Even when he's that wide-eyed kid coming to Wall Street, he is ready for anything and he will do anything. And even the scummy approach that he has when he walks into that strip mall with Spike Jonze there and swindles that, like he convinces that guy to buy a whole bunch of shares of complete trash stock. You know from the start that he is a bad person. And everything he does up to this point is from the lens of he's a bad person and what he thinks is a good thing, you shouldn't. And that's the thing. Scorsese's going to challenge you in any of his films because, like, if you go into this movie thinking, like, this glorifies things, this is the first time, like, how could you root for somebody like this? Scorsese made a career of making horrible human beings the protagonists of his films. Because, like, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, I hate Henry Hill so much. And that's the thing. And this has an ending like Goodfellas, except one step further. Because, like, at the end, Henry Hill's fine in Goodfellas. He got away with it, but he doesn't like the outcome of his life. That's the one thing. He thinks he's trapped in prison because all I can get is a bunch of egg noodles and ketchup. Like, he hates the life that he has. Jordan Belfort went to prison and is right back at it again, doing a different thing, which is so crazy they actually had Jordan Belfort.
See, I didn't know it the first time I saw the movie. I was like, a random guy. And then after doing a little bit of research, I was like, oh, that was Jordan Belfort. That was the actual Jordan. Okay.
And when he's like, sell me this pen. he didn't really get punished.
No,
But that's life. And Scorsese's not afraid to say that.
No.
And he, I'm sure, does well for himself. His memoir got turned into this giant movie. And he's been on like business shows and stuff like that. And that's what this movie is. And I don't think it glorifies things because the whole entire lens, for me at least, my perspective on this, the whole entire lens of this movie is like, he is a horrible person. You shouldn't like anything he likes. And this is basically you going on a crazy ride of his warped perspective on reality. And then just in time for the reality to sink in at the end, where it's just like, and yeah, he got away with it. And he's perfectly fine. Like, he didn't go away to prison for decades. He did a couple of years at white collar prison. They show him doing tennis, being perfectly fine, and then him at the end. And I think that's why. But the thing is, it's like, I can easily see why people warp this and think that this is, because I remember stories of businessmen clapping, standing ovation at the end of this movie, because I can see them just seeing what they want to see. So I think in that perspective, this is like, for me, thinking about this after all these years, it's like, I watched this movie this time realizing like, you don't like him, like you shouldn't like him from the start. And you should know that he's not a good person from the start. And that's the ride that it takes you on. And by the end, you're just like, wow, it is a cautionary tale. Because like, he hits flat on his face. He just is able to get up and brush it off, because that's life sometimes.
I mean, he's playing tennis in prison. So, I mean,
good for him.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's a thing, because like, I guess, Rob, what's your perspective on like what this movie really means?
Well, and that's a great question, because I didn't really think about it maybe the first two times I went and saw it in theaters, because the first time, coming out of it, I was just like, that was one of the most entertaining movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And, I didn't really think about kind of like the deeper meaning, or what Jordan Belfort really represents, and, what kind of person he is. You're watching it, and I know the first time I watched it, I'm like, this is a bad person. He's a terrible human being. He's a scumbag. Like you said, he's a sinister guy. But, I'm 17 years old, not really processing that, thinking about it, because all I'm thinking about is, man, I just had a really great time at the movies watching this insane, debauchery-filled, just nonsense. But this is one of the films that I go back and rewatch every year, because I take a little bit out of each experience, and I enjoy the debauchery less and realize how much of a scumbag this guy really is. There's a line early in this film that really hits, and it's like it might not hit for everybody, but it kind of represents what kind of person he is. It's when he has that first interaction with Mark Hanna, or Matthew McConaughey's character, and he's like, "Did you really pitch a blue chip stock at a job interview?" He's like, "Had to impress him somehow," and that told me really all I needed to know about this guy is in it for the money. He doesn't really care who he has to hurt, what he has to do to get it, but this guy is a money hungry machine, and he will do whatever it takes.
And from the very beginning, it's like, do you know what he's pushing? Do you know what kind of guy he is? And that's why, like, he's not somebody corrupted by Wall Street.
No.
He felt like the kind of guy that found the place that he wanted to be. And that's the thing, because you can tell in the one scene, which also Kyle Chandler is great in this movie too.
It's fantastic.
And that scene on the yacht where he holds his own against Leo is great. And that's the scene where he's just like, I know all these things that all these other Wall Street guys are doing. And that really shows like Leo hates the Wall Street establishment that doesn't take him seriously. and he also despises the life he came from, which is what's represented by his first wife.
Well, that I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a line that happens right before that conversation with Kyle Chandler when he's talking with this guy at the restaurant. He's like, "No one at the SEC knows you. You're kind of a nobody." He's like, "No one knows me," and I was like, "Oh crap! Here, you shouldn't have said that. Here we go. Why'd you say that?"
No, and because that was his ego that took over. It's just like, I should be known. People should know me.
Exactly.
And the fact that he started leaning into the whole Wolfie thing, because at first he hated that article called him the Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
But then it became his persona. And that's such a fascinating thing. And like, and this movie has such a way about it, because like when you see Kyle Chandler on that subway at the end, you're kind of like, wow. Him sitting there really contemplating his own existence and thinking, was Jordan right?
I see.
Just a
I'm
little
glad
bit.
because that's one of the things I have taken away from each time I go back and rewatch it. Because I didn't notice, like, maybe even the few times I saw it in theaters, but especially when I bought the Blu-ray and stuff afterwards, I noticed that look he gives, that dissatisfied look of, "This is my life. Jordan was right."
And that's the thing. And that's so interesting, because it's like this film doesn't shy away from challenging you of like, yeah, you're a good Kyle Chandler's a good person. He did the right thing in trying to take down all this corruption, but like, on some selfish level, he's thinking about like, yeah, my life could be better. And that matches so well with the ending that this film has. And like, things spiral, and like Kyle Chandler really sells it in that scene. It's so interesting, even like cameos in this movie, because like there's 3 famous directors in this movie. Like the whole Spike Jonze thing at the beginning of the movie. It's so weird. And then Rob Reiner.
Oh, I love his very first scene. Who the fuck interrupts me during Equalizer? It's like, so perfect, because it's just him yelling at me for like a 2 minutes straight.
And then he's like, "Hello. Oh, how are you? Oh, cheerio. Oh, what's going on in the show?" And the one scene that people are always going to remember is when he storms in and he's like, "Jordy, what are you doing? Want to spend $20,000 on one dinner?"
Yep.
Besides cure cancer. And then, oh my God, Jonah Hill just being like, yeah, Max, they did cure cancer. That's the thing. That's why they were so expensive. And you can tell Rob Reiner wants to rip his head off.
Oh my God. that whole interaction is just, it's gold, because then it's like TNA, no, TNE, not TNA, TNE, because he does not like Jonah Hill's character at all. They don't have a lot of scenes together, but in that moment, you can just tell the dissatisfaction of, he doesn't like really anyone Jordan hangs around with.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think Jordan's dad still has this perspective of like, these other people are bad influence on my son.
Yeah.
Even though Jordan's the one who brought them all together.
Exactly.
And I think Max is a little oblivious to his own son's intentions. And like, but that's the thing, he's blinded by his love for his son. And you see that in like that scene where it's just like, "Johnny, what are you doing?" And like the whole entire scene where it's like, "Dad, women these days, neck down, shaved," is like, no bush. And like that whole, like, obviously it's a funny interaction, but like that's saying a lot of things in that scene in terms of like this perspective of like, is like Jordan's whole perspective is like, women are offering so much now. Like, how can I only be like stuck with one of them? And
disgusting.
That's the perspective he has. And like, you know what? Like, fine. If that's your perspective on things and you don't want to believe in monogamy, that's perfectly fine. Right. But you better find somebody to be with who believes it too.
Yeah.
And he definitely found 2 women who didn't.
Well, I was happy for his first wife, Kristen Millett, when she left, because you could tell early on she was not meant for that life at all.
Nope.
So I'm glad she was able to get out. And I kind of want to circle back on that whole uh, you know, I hate calling her that because there's more to the character of Naomi.
Mhm.
I see two halves to the character. I think on one half, I think she kind of was a gold digger at first, but then when they started that family together, I think you see a different side of Naomi and that she really cares for her children. She really cares, like, hey, Jordan, you really need to clean up your act. She had that confrontation with the water and everything.
Yep.
It's that to me was kind of the turning point of my thoughts on her character. Of okay, she's not just this gold digging person. No, she actually, to a degree, loves Jordan, but more, she just wants to keep her family intact.
Hmm. Well, and this, like, my general perspective on things is people should live their lives how they want to live their lives. But if you're going to have other people in your lives, you better line up those expectations with people.
Right.
And like, it was very obvious that Jordan's first wife did not have those same expectations.
Mm-mm.
And it became very apparent that Naomi, despite, because like she wanted to live the high life. And so Jordan, they had that in common. And I think that's one of the things that they connected with most was having appreciation for like the expensive things in life. But where that connection ends is where like Naomi's not doing this just to like get his money. Like she expects loyalty.
Right.
And Jordan has none. Like
Zero.
and even up to the end, it shows he has no loyalty because he had loyalty to his friends until his back was against the wall and he's just like, oh, bye everybody. And
Well, he found out too how much of his how much his friends liked him when Jonah Hill turned him in after that note he slipped. Because that's another thing I didn't notice too first. I was like, how does this smart guy just leave that note hanging? And then I was like, well, duh. Jonah Hill probably turned that into the FBI to save his own ass. So,
mm-hmm. And that's the thing. And like, there's no loyalty and all that stuff. Like, there's no honor among thieves except for one thief felt like he had any kind of honor. And a little shout out to John Bernthal, who I love in this movie.
so
I love John Bernthal in general, but like the whole thing where it's like they introduce him, he's like lifting weights in the backyard. It's like, hey Ma, we got chicken.
Ma, as he's lifting weights, we got a chicken or what?
Yeah. And he was like, hey, tell your sister I said hi. And like the kid is just like, oh my God. Because like John Bernthal's a scummy guy in this movie, but like he's the least scummy guy.
Scumbag. Because he
and
learned
like,
his lesson.
Yeah.
After going to prison.
Yep. Oh, and that whole scene. I hate Donnie so much in this movie. That whole entire thing in the parking lot between John Bernthal's character and Jonah Hill is just, that frustrates me so much. But like the one scene, at the diner where you have Leo bringing his friends together for the first time. And he's like, try to sell me this pen. He's like, I need you to write your name down. I don't have a pen. Supply equals demand. And that whole entire thing is like, Jordan learns that from him. Like, that's how you have to make a need. And, that's a big idea of economics, is finding a need for something. And if there isn't a need for your product, creating a need for your product. Obviously, there's a lot more twisted ways of doing that, like a la Lex Luthor. Buy up all the land of the desert. How do you make a need? Blow up the West Coast, and then you have the West Coast. But like, it's that idea. It's like that warped sense of like, economics, and that is a thing all the way up until the end, because he uses that as his sales pitch when he does those speeches and stuff like that. Can you imagine like a Jordan Belfort TED Talk? Basically. Oh my God. But
people would show up at least. So
you have John Bernthal, and like Jon Favreau pops up for a little bit in the
good
film.
This is the few scenes he's in. And one of my favorite scenes too, it's one of those quieter moments we were talking about, because we don't get a lot of them. that scene on the farm
Yep.
when they're like trying to give it, like, you need to, if you do this, if you walk away, if you step down, you're gonna walk away from this. Yeah, you have to pay like millions of dollars in fines, but you're not gonna spend any time in jail.
He could have, but that's not the life he wanted.
Well, see, there was one mistake I think that happened in this whole thing, right? One, he should have never had that meeting in front of his entire, in front of the entire team, right? Announcing he's going to leave. He should have never done that. Two, Favreau should have been there to kind of be like, hey, Jordan, what are you doing?
Yep.
But that scene to me just shows like, we were talking about Rob Reiner's character earlier, right? And kind of I wouldn't say twist the relationship with his son, but like a little bit of a weird relationship with his son, right? I love that scene because like that love part comes in there, like where he's trying to save his son, right? At the end of the day, he's just trying to save his son. That affection, that love he has for Jordan, it all comes out in that one scene. And even Favreau's character, just this guy working for the SEC, trying to save his client's ass from spending time in jail. And that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, honestly, because it paints this portrait in that one scene of what Jordan could have had if he had walked away. If he had just stepped down, let Donnie take over, what could have what could have been. And that's kind of like another thing I want to talk about too, Shane, is at the end of this movie, no one wins. There is not a happy ending for anybody in this, in my opinion. Not even Kyle Chandler puts him away. We're talking about like the subway scene. Margot Robbie doesn't win because her family is now disbanded. A child lost a father for 3 years in jail, and now they have to deal with custody battles and all that stuff. Yep. Jordan, who thought he had friends, his best friend betrayed him.
Yeah.
So, and then Jordan, of course, went to jail for 3 years. Now, you could say Jordan probably has the best ending of all of them because he really didn't. He should have spent a lot more time in prison. But he got away scotch-free for 3 years. And now he's out doing the same thing again, just in a different way.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, there's like this isn't a happy ending, obvious, and like that's the thing. There's no way this is a happy ending for like for the audience. It's a sobering admission of what our society's really like.
Yeah,
and that's Scorsese, and that's the thing. Can you believe a 7-year-old man made this movie?
That's I just want to know. There's one thing that every time I rewatch this, I just want to know, and because it's my second favorite movie of all time, Shane. But it's probably the film on my top 10 list I have a few problems with, just because I think we were talking about the debauchery and how much. I mean, it's a lot. I feel like, especially in that second hour, I feel like he could have cut back a little bit on that. Just because I think we got at that point we got it.
Yeah,
it didn't bother me. Like, I wasn't like, oh god, that's just too much. But I was like, okay, no, Marty, we get it. Let's move on. But I mean, the film kind of has a darker tone in that second half, especially when Jordan decides to stay.
Yeah,
But I would like to have a conversation with Marty, be like, how much debauchery did you really want to have in this movie, and what's your thought process in having all this stuff going down?
Supposedly, this is toned down.
Yeah, I've read that.
I've read that. Like, I don't know if I want to see anything worse than this. And it's so fascinating too, because like where this fits into Scorsese's career, I don't think he had a film quite like this since probably Casino.
Casino wasn't on the level of this though.
Well,
I love
to be
Casino.
Honest, I don't know if any of his movies are on the level of this. This is off the rails craziness. But like I feel like, and especially after this, because the films that he has after this is Silence and The Irishman. And both of them are very, very different movies. And like The Irishman is that sobering, like wet, cold shower after like Goodfellas and Casino and just being like, no, this is what being a gangster is really like.
It was very somber.
Yeah.
It's a somber film.
Especially
And
last hour of it. It's just like, especially how they leave
that
him
final
at the
shot.
end there.
Yeah.
Yep. But like this is something you would expect this from like a 20-year-old making a movie like this. And the thing is, it has all the Scorsese-isms.
It
Like
does.
this has Scorsese all over it. Like the shot of him being like giving his inspirational speeches, and then that camera just craning over this vast office space.
Yeah.
And like the musical choices, like when Smokestack Lightning by Howlin' Wolf cuts in during that first giant thing of debauchery, you're just like, ooh, it's dark, it's sinister. Like, because they slow it down. It's a really unnerving experience. And I find it very interesting of like, it's the blues. They use the blues a lot in this movie. And in general, I think the soundtrack's almost perfect. That one random Foo Fighters song feels so out of place in this movie. I'm like,
I think my favorite was the Mrs. Robinson when everyone's kind of getting their comeuppance. I was like, I don't know why that song, because that's actually one of the first times I've ever heard that song play ever. So to me, I was like, well, this is a really catchy song.
well, and what that ends with Kyle Chandler on the train too.
Right. So
you know what? Oh, I never thought about this because The Graduate ends on a bus. And like slowly the smile fading away and the cold realization of like reality setting in. And that kind of is what happens with Kyle Chandler on that train. I'm like, now I'm thinking about him, like that was probably purpose.
You know, well, like, I have yet to see The Graduate, but I kind of want to watch it, but it's on my watch list. Like I said, on each rewatch, that shot just becomes more impactful to like the kind of the whole messaging of the rest of the movie, because it's kind of like we're kind of in Kyle Chandler's shoes a little bit. Like, yeah, we're never gonna have the life Jordan had, you know, for maybe the 99% of us who saw that movie. We're never gonna have that life that Jordan got to live. And you know, but not to say that we all kind of dislike our lives that maybe Kyle Chandler does, or at least in this movie, but that's kind of the way I see it. We're kind of in that POV of Kyle Chandler a little bit.
But this film is directed the hell out of it.
Absolutely.
There's so much energy about it. It's so stylish. And I feel like this is probably Scorsese's last hurrah into something like this. I don't think he's going to make a film like this ever again.
I hope he doesn't. Honestly, I loved Irishman. I wasn't big on Silence like a lot of other people are. I do need to go back and rewatch it. I've appreciated more when I did go back and rewatch it. But it's still not like top tier Scorsese for me. I think it's more of an appreciation on the filmmaking style of it for me, and the performances, especially from Garfield in that movie is just, and him and Driver are just, that movie something. But it's almost like Todd Phillips made this movie. That's kind of, at parts in this, I was like, did Todd Phillips make this movie? Are we sure this is Scorsese? Because at the time, Todd Phillips wasn't making Joker yet. He was still doing Hangover films. So it almost seems like a very, very heavy Todd Phillips Hangover kind of a film, because it has that energy. It has that kind of that Hangover tone a little bit. But
and this is Scorsese being like, I could do it better.
There you go.
It's just like, bam.
There you go.
Is this is a black comedy. You're gonna laugh watching this, but you're laughing at some dark stuff.
That's what I love about it too, because like, I'm not condoning what's going on or anything. I'm not appreciating what Jordan's doing or any of these guys are doing, because this is basically a boys' club when it's all, but you can't help but laugh at a lot of stuff in this movie. And you're right, it's an uncomfortable experience. And that last half hour is very uncomfortable. We talked about a little bit that fight with Naomi.
Where he hits her, it's just like
twice.
Yeah.
Slaps her once, and then he punches her in the gut. And it's like my entire theater, when he punched her, it was like you could hear a pen drop. That entire just went to silence. It's dark. It goes places I didn't think it was. I didn't think the movie was going to, because the first 2 hours kind of gives off that tone, like, yeah, we're not really going to get really dark and serious, but it did, and I'm glad it did, because it needed that. This film needed that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I feel like you would have seen a lot more pushback on this film if it didn't have those more darker moments.
It was Naomi throwing that cold water on us, just splash.
Well, really, his life started really going downhill once they got married.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I saw it. Now, I think he made his first mistake when he brought in. I think he brought in the wrong group of people to work with. Those were not. I think maybe the one person I think he probably could have gotten away with was Rugrat, right? The guy with the glasses and the bad wig and everything, because he was smart. He knew what he was doing. The rest of them were basically idiots. And they kind of all were, but he at least had some college. There's that whole montage of him introducing his friends and everything. And he was the only one with college experience, went to law school, right? Donnie, he was just doing it because he's loyal to Donnie. They were friends for a while. But Donnie brought a lot of shit to the company that kind of led to the downfall of his career.
Yep. That's because he was unhinged.
Yeah.
Like that, him getting John Bernthal's character arrested. That felt like the
and not telling Jordan about
domino.
And hiding it from Jordan. I feel like they could have, I don't know how much they could have done, but I feel like they could have done at least something to kind of get themselves out of the situation. Now, thankful for them, Bernthal wasn't the rat, so it didn't rat out anybody. But it goes back
at like what, 50?
That's okay. So that's another thing I want to talk about too, Shane, real quick, is they throw that welcome back party for Bernthal's character right on the boat, and there's this narration that Jordan's giving, right? And it's like, we welcomed him back. He said he didn't want to come back. He didn't want the money we were going to offer him. He was just like happy to be here at this party, being here with us friends, but he's like, I'm out. Oh yeah, 2 years later he died. Almost like, well, if he had stayed with us, he wouldn't have died. That's kind of.
I think it was similar to that earlier in the film where there's that one part. He's like, oh yeah, he wound up killing himself. But anyway, like that's just Jordan showing his lack of humanity, and that's the thing. The film tries to tell you that this is a scummy human being, and some people are still going to connect with them, and that says a lot about humanity. But I guess at this point, Rod, what are there any other like big thoughts or ideas that you wanted to share about The Wolf of Wall Street?
No, I mean, to me, it's a masterpiece of a film, in my opinion. I love it, even with the problems I have with its debauchery and its portrayal of women. 99% of me loves this movie so much, and it's really because of the performances, and mainly Leo. I think Leo is just acting circles around everybody else whenever he's on screen. I don't think we're ever going to see Scorsese do a film like this ever again. I think he kind of wants to do more films like The Irishman or Silence, kind of more of those somber, not laid back, but in a way, it's kind of more laid back than what Wolf of Wall Street is.
Well, and his new film's a Western.
I can't wait for that movie to come out.
And Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm really hoping it comes out this year.
I think it is. I think it's going to come out in the fall, probably towards, so we can get that awards
It'll
buzz.
be a December movie.
Yeah, it's going to try to get that awards buzz. But yeah, overall, The Wolf of Wall Street to me is wonderfully acted. The screenplay by Terrence Winter is incredible. I love the screenplay for this. The soundtrack, like you said, is really great. The film looks beautiful too. I mean, this is a gorgeous looking film, man. I recently got the 4K Steelbook, right? And not much of a difference from the 4K and the Blu-ray, but there's just a few shots that really just come out and pop. But yeah, overall, it's extremely entertaining, well acted, and to this day, I don't know if there's ever going to be a Scorsese film that'll top this for me. Because my second favorite after this is Casino, The Irishman. I'm sorry. So, I wish some stuff was toned down a little bit, but overall, I can't. Just the pure enjoyment I have watching this film, it's incredible.
And I want to give three quick shout outs to a newcomer to Scorsese, Rodrigo Prieto, who took over for Robert Richardson, who had been DP for Scorsese for at least a decade up to this point. And Prieto wound up doing the cinematography for this, and it's sharp. And then he killed it again with Silence, which he wound up getting a lot of buzz for. Thelma Schoonmaker, who his editor, she is a master, and she had edited his movies for decades, and still killing it. And for Robbie Robertson from the band, who is a music supervisor for this film and had been for decades up to this point, because there is no score to this movie. It's all soundtrack, all great tracks picked. And Robbie Robertson, post The Last Waltz, have been working with Scorsese ever since. Some of the things that I love most are like Color of Money, does a great job with the music choices, all the haunting modern classical music that he picks for Shutter Island. And then the soundtrack to this is so on point for the most part. Still so weird. Why the hell is there a Foo Fighters song in this movie? And it's anachronistic too. Like really anachronistic, because like Nirvana wasn't even a thing. And like Dave Grohl wasn't even in Nirvana yet, let alone the Foo Fighters. Just an interesting thought. But this was also so 80s.
Very much so.
So 80s.
Very much so.
But that is The Wolf of Wall Street. And just to give you all a heads up, I only have 3 more Scorsese movies after this. And I can't believe it. Been doing this since September. We got Silence, Rolling Thunder review, the Bob Dylan documentary from Netflix, and The Irishman. So coming to a close, and tune in next week when my buddy Aaron, not that Aaron from Sif Pop, is going to be coming on for Silence, who's an actual pastor. So that'll be an interesting conversation.
That should be really interesting.
So his last one he came on for was Eyes Wide Shut. That might be one of my favorite episodes because I had 3 people on for that one, and our buddy Frank was drinking.
Oh my God.
Oh, that was such an interesting conversation.
I need to go back and watch that now. I really want to see that episode now.
You could tell I lost it a couple of times, some of the things that Frank said throughout the show. But we're wrapping things up with our recommendations. So, sir, what are some of your recommendations?
Well, we were talking off screen. I had a few, and I'm glad you allowed me to say all 3 of them. So the first one I want to shout out is Columbus. Now, you and I were talking about a little bit about Kaganada, and I think you've seen After Yang now, right?
Yes.
So yeah, he did After Yang. I got to see that at Sundance a couple months ago, and I wasn't the biggest fan of After Yang, but my biggest praise was, man, this guy knows how to direct. Like
that opening credits sequence,
so good, Shade. Just it's so bizarre, but so good. Oh man, that's a fantastic opening sequence. But I wanted to watch Columbus because 1, I love John Cho, and 2, I was like, yeah, I need to see more of this guy because this guy hasn't directed anything really besides I think those 2 films. I think maybe one other, right? Or just these 2 films.
Trying to think, but I do recall like Columbus was his other big one up to this point.
And I think it was also at Sundance too. It just didn't get the wide distribution appeal that After Yang probably got. Because After Yang went straight like Showtime, and it's getting a lot more appeal than Columbus did. Columbus, Shane, is the definition of an art house film. Good Lord, because this film tells its story through its architecture.
Yep.
And that is not how you kind of want to promote a film, or like kind of how you recommend a film. Yes, the architecture is how you is the heart of the film, but it kind of is. And the
Is it
relationship between John Cho and Haley Lou
okay?
Richardson
Yeah,
is so beautiful.
yeah.
Just from that long take of them on opposite ends of the fence or the gate,
Mhm.
having that conversation, getting to know each other for about, I don't know, 5 minutes. It feels like there's so much just the shots telling a story and the way characters are feeling that I love about it. But it's also a story about going out, going for your dream, going for your aspirations. And for John Cho, it's all about, reconnecting with his father, even though he really can't because his father's in the coma and everything. And he's pretty much, I mean, he's pretty much dying. They don't really say it because we never really get to see the father, actually, I think. Uh, uh, but this film is just, it reminds me a little bit, and it's a weird comparison, but it reminds me of The Lost Daughter, Shane, because both of these are slow burns
Mhm.
that don't lead to that third act kind of like oomph that you're looking for. Both third acts are quite solemn. And maybe I'm
Yeah.
giving the wrong comparison, but that's like kind of the first thing I thought of was The Lost Daughter because I was just having a conversation about that with somebody on Instagram. But
Interesting.
I that's kind of how that's kind of how I felt about Columbus, right? That third act leads to a not a oomph, but it's very solemn, it's very quiet, and that I don't want to give it away, but there's a one of the last interactions of the film between Haley Lou Richardson and John Cho. I didn't expect it to hit me as much as it actually did.
Mhm.
And Haley Lou Richardson surprised the hell. I am becoming more and more impressed with her because the first thing I ever saw her was Bridget 17. And seeing her in this, I was like, oh no, this girl can really act. Because she did another film on HBO Max 2 years ago on Pregnant. And I actually like that film more than most people did. I found the film to be quite good, and she was the main reason why. So
Mhm.
she's an actress I think that people need to look out for years to come because she's really great.
I do really like her, and it was I was trying to remember. I was like, is this Haley Richardson or Zoe Deutsch? Was this movie?
Hey, do not get those two mixed up.
Well, to
I
be
have a love
fair,
for
I
both.
haven't watched Columbus since I think when it first came out on VOD. So
Yeah.
like that was like 2017. It's been a while.
Mhm.
Been 5 years. And like she's a fantastic actress. And I love seeing John Cho in things where he's not just playing like MILF guy number two. Because obviously that was the first thing I saw him in.
Well, I do want to recommend, like, I recommend this film, but it requires your patience because
Yeah.
this is a slow burn.
Mhm.
And it's just really just these two talking and looking at architecture for about an hour and 40 minutes. So it does require your patience. This is one of those slow burns.
Mhm.
But I found each conversation so riveting and so, I mean, emotionally compelling. So for me, the film works. And after that first viewing, I was like, I listened to that score at least 2 times because that score was really beautiful. And yeah, it's a film I'm not going to go back and rewatch because, like I said, it does require that commitment, but it's a really beautiful film. And it's some of my top 30 films of all time. Shane. If I had to redo my 2017 list, it'd probably be right behind Florida Project. But it is such a wonderful movie.
It is. And then what was your second recommendation?
True Mothers was my second recommendation. The film that came out last year, Shane. Yeah, last year,
Yes.
2021, I think it was.
Trying to.
Oh, do you have the Blu-ray or DVD of it? Of course you do. Oh man.
So I got this because which is interesting because my next movie came. I do a movie club through Film Movement. So they send me a movie each month. And this was one of my movies that I got. And it's a great film.
It's a great movie. And we were talking about a little bit of off screen, but the main premise of this movie is, these adults, the wife can't conceive a child, so they adopt And I guess adoption over there is a little bit different because I guess they had a chance to meet the mother first before adopting the child, which was a little weird. I think that's how it went, right? So, they have that conversation with the mother, or some or the adult of the child who had the mother, and all these years later, now that the mother comes back, wants her child, and a lot of this film is told through flashbacks. And I told you, like, that was my one big criticism of
Yeah.
this film is its over reliance on flashbacks,
Mhm.
especially from the actual mother of the child. I think her flashback scenes go on a bit too long, but it's the performances by all the three main actors are all terrific, especially the mother of the actual mother of the child. I thought she
Mhm.
was stupid good. I thought she was fantastic. So especially since I've joined Films for Tuesday, and I've gone back and we watched like a lot of international films. And this film last year, because this just popped up to me on my Google Play Store. I was scrolling through TV and I was like, oh, True Mothers, that looks kind of interesting. I was like, something I'd be interested in. And it had me crying a few times. I loved it.
It's one of those kind of hidden gems that you really don't expect. And like, to be honest, I probably would never have watched it if I didn't have this film movement, movie club. But like, it came and I'm like, dang, they're
And
like,
the
I've
ending hits
gotten
too.
a lot of great gems from them. So shamelessly plugging film movement
There
on
you
here
go.
because they have virtual cinema too, so you could rent films from them and stuff like that. And they have a
Gotcha.
lot of great independent films, international films. Like this is like I haven't gotten a chance to watch this yet, but this is like a new Slovakian film, and it looks bleak to say the least. But when you're able to get something like that, and like your last recommendation, which I think was really high for both of us last year.
It was, yes. My other recommendation, because I want to say this for last because it's Oscar time and everything. And this film to me, I don't know how the Academy just missed out on this film, but 9 Days is when I first came out of it, I was like, that is the adult version of Soul.
Yeah.
Honestly. When I sitting down thinking about it. And the performances from the entire ensemble are great, Shane. I think that's warranted to say, but Winston Duke probably gives the best performance of his career. Zazie Beetz probably gives the best performance of her career. And like we were saying, Tony Hale, good Lord, he is
Mhm.
so good. That that scene with him and Winston Duke, that attitude change from Tony Hale was frightening. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I got legit scared of Tony Hale, but it's another one of those slow burn chain, but it's not like a Columbus slow burn. This is like it's a somber slow burn, but you're always intrigued about what's going on and you're interested in seeing these people trying to have a life on earth. And I like the VHS style in which he's looking at, in which Winston Duke and Benedict Wong are observing these people's lives. I
Mhm.
liked how that system works, and I like the scenarios Winston Duke gives these individuals. I think the first one he gives was like, you see your son hanging from a chair or something, and I forgot the exact situation. It was like you either save your son or you let all these other people die. And it's like the situation he gives are very dark and grim, but it's like you gonna have to factor that in. And
Mhm.
I wish we could have a spoiler conversation because there's God, yeah, I don't want to give it away,
I
but
have a future episode of Wasteland Talk spoiler review of 9 Days.
I mean that because Bill Skarsgård and Zazie Beetz, I'll just say, are very heavy players in this film, and that dinner scene with them is really interesting and really interesting conversation. Oh, see, I can't. I don't want to say it because I don't want to spoil it for people, but it's just, yeah, they become major players
Yeah.
for the film, and I love where they take their characters, and then that final scene of I don't even want to give that away because that's kind of a spoiler, but there's a scene towards the end with Winston and Zazie Beetz that's just so beautiful. I wouldn't think it was going to hit you deep, but it's like, oh
This
man,
film has an unbelievably cathartic ending to it
it does.
that just hits you very deeply. And this is a very emotionally penetrating kind of film where like you feel a lot when you watch this movie.
Oh, you do.
And I'm trying to double check if I bought this yet or not. Because this definitely went on my to get list once.
Yeah, I remember this film came out the same weekend as the Suicide Squad, and I was like, well, that's just you're just trying to destroy your film right there by releasing this from the Suicide Squad. But
Yeah, I don't think I bought it yet, but it's on my list to get. And it is a beautiful film.
yeah, I mentioned the Suicide Squad because I wish this film had got more attention, and I don't think Sony Classic Pictures did a really good job marketing this film at all. But I think it's gonna be one of those films people are gonna find a lot later and really appreciate it. Maybe like a year or two from now, whenever that happens. But I came out of that movie being like, shit, that was better than the Suicide Squad. And I love the Suicide Squad, but that was better than the Suicide Squad. Because it really it had me thinking a lot afterwards. Like on that whole car ride home, I was just like, I was kind of down a little bit, but I was like, well, it really just makes you think. And like I said, it really is like soul for adults. That's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, and it really hits emotionally, deeply penetrating kind of emotions. And I'm trying to see, I felt like I thought I had bought this, but I definitely want to rewatch it soon because I just loved it so much.
I want to recommend one scene, tiny, tiny, tiny spoiler, but there's a scene where Winston Duke is creating a moment for a individual, and one involves a beach. Shane, that moment, I wanted to like sink in my seat and just cry. I really did. I really just want to sink in my seat and be like, God damn it.
Yeah, this movie will get you quite a few times. Now, when I do recommendations, I usually like to recommend, if I can, if I've watched at least one of each of these, a new film, a film off my watch list, and one of my movies that I rewatched. So, new film. So I have to say X, because like that is a crazy, crazy thrill ride of a movie. It is darkly funny at times. It is legitimately scary. It is disturbing. It is gory, and it has a interesting sex positive kind of message to it. And like dealing with sex workers and stuff like that, it has something to say. And it is grindhouse kind of crazy slasher flick. And the performance is like Mia Goth with both of her performances. Jenna Ortega, Brittany Snow, I really enjoyed.
She was my MVP. She was so freaking good.
Kid Cudi.
Well, I mean, look, Kid Cudi's done a lot of movies, but it makes up for what he did in like Need for Speed and some other films he's been a part of. I was like, look at that. All Kid Cudi had to do was be in an A24 film to show us how he can really act. Thank you, Kid Cudi.
So X, and there's a surprise. So stick to the end.
I almost left because I really had to pee. I'm glad I stayed. But yeah, it's that. Yeah.
There's a surprise coming to all of you through this movie. I did also see, I felt like I wanted to bring up two movies I saw this weekend because I also saw Jujutsu Kaisen, the new movie based off of the anime. And it was a really cool anime. And it did really well for itself at the box office. It's exciting. It focuses on this world where people have the abilities to gain control over cursed spirits. And the last 20 minutes of this movie is ridiculous. Like the actual action sequences when it really kicks up. So fantastic. But those are two new movies that I saw. One off my watch list was Bicycle Thieves, which is the classic Italian film I watched on Criterion Channel about a working class man whose bike gets stolen. And if he doesn't have the bike, he's going to lose his job. And it's all about him trying to find his bike and dealing with classism and stuff like that in Italy. And nobody is a professional actor in the film. It's nothing but actual just amateur people. and it is a beautiful and moving film. And it'll leave you sad. It'll definitely leave you on a down note. And then one movie that I've rewatched that are my films that I definitely wanted to point out was Arctic, which was a survival thriller that came out probably like 2-3 years ago at this point with Mads Mikkelsen, which basically he carries the whole film. It's mostly just him and one other person who's half dead. So really just Mads Mikkelsen the whole time. And if you like Mads Mikkelsen and a good survival film out in the Arctic, watch Arctic. So there you go. But those are my recommendations. We had quite a few of you for all you out there. And that's a wrap here on Welcome to the Wasteland. Rod, I really appreciate you coming on this week.
I appreciate you having me. It's always a great time being able to converse with you about film, whether I'm on here or you're on our podcast. It's always a joy just seeing you and talking movies, whatever we're talking about. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I didn't quote an Adam McKay movie once today.
Well, I guess we can. I don't know if that's a success or a failure. At this point, I think for us, it's a failure.
I did definitely at least do some impressions today. So there you go.
You did.
What did the sides cure cancer? Yeah, they actually cure cancer. Just like I thought he was going to murder him. Thought that was going to happen. But yes, so check out all the wonderful things that Rod's doing over on Instagram and on his podcast. So if you want to shamelessly plug one last time before we wrap up.
Yes, like I said in the beginning, you can check myself and my buddy Ben. We do a podcast, the Infinity Film Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're basically everywhere almost at this point. So, and we appreciate the increased viewership each week. I mean, we love it. So thank you guys so much for that support, and hope you guys are able to check us out. And then my personal film page is just at the Cinema Gallery. That's Cinema Gallery with 3 L's because Instagram is stupid. So there you go.
There you go. Thank you, Rod. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.